to January, it means one thing for baseball. There's the hot stove has been lukewarm so far. It means MLB Hall of Fame debate season. It means we're going to get the MLB Network Roundtable with all the old writers. Peter Gammons will probably be there. Bob Costas will be like pontificating for an hour and a half. So I figured, why not just have the everyman's version of the Hall of Fame Roundtable and kind of talk about some of the hot button issues that are going on. There's not a lot of like surefire. There's no Derek Jeter on this year's ballot, but there's a lot of really good guys on there. So I figured we could go chop it up about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's a very interesting class, as it has been the past couple of years with some of the steroid guys on there, and some have fallen off, but it seems to be like a core group of guys who the controversy surrounds every year. And like you said, there are no first ballot, like that guy, he shows up and he's in. It'll be interesting to see who gets in, if anyone gets in. So yeah, again, it's a very interesting class. So I'm waiting, for, I don't know the exact date that they announce it, but I'm definitely excited for that announcement.
I think it's January 26th is what I have.
Yeah, it's always right, because I remember Mike Mussina got inducted. Well, they announced it on my birthday, which is January 22nd. So yeah, probably I guess the third week in January, somewhere around there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Baseball is one of the Hall of Fames. People always get this wrong for football. They say, what jersey are they going to wear for the football Hall of Fame? But you don't get a jersey.
No.
But baseball, you got to figure out who's going on the cap, where you could be a wimp and have no team on there.
Yep, like Mike Mussina.
Like Mike Mussina. All right, first up, steroids. Every single year for Major League Baseball, for the Hall of Fame, there's always this big steroid conversation. It's a lot of people playing the moral compass and a lot of people assuming things. And where do you kind of stand where it comes to steroid guys on the ballot for the Hall of Fame?
I mean, like, if you want to get like technical, like the Hall of Fame is a museum. And a museum, again, it talks about good and bad of whatever the subject is. I mean, there's museums on a ton of different things. And again, they cover the bad stuff. They cover the good stuff. The bad stuff being steroids. Again, with it being a museum, I think these guys should get in. I think some of them. I think the Barry Bonds. I think Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, guys like that. I mean, again, and you can go back and forth like, well, Bonds never tested positive. He never had a positive test. And same thing with a few of these other guys. I mean, they played. There are guys in the Hall of Fame that took steroids, presumably, and they're in there. I mean, and again, if Bud Selig is in there, who kind of turned up his whole blind eye to it, yeah, he swept it under the rug. Like, oh, no, we didn't know what was going on. It's like, dude, you knew. Everybody knew. And for him to be in the Hall of Fame, and then for these guys to have the stick, they're left on the outside looking in. I think it's crap. I mean, Barry Bonds is the best baseball player I've ever seen. You can talk to a handful of different people, and I'm sure that they would say the same exact thing. And with Bonds, it's always they're like, well, he was a Hall of Famer before steroids. And okay, we don't know that. All I know is the guy he knew that he would get one pitch a series to hit, and he would deposit it 440 feet away into a seat where the guy thought there was no chance of him catching a ball. I think, again, some of those guys, the big ones, I think they have to be in. And again, put them in a back hallway, put them in an asterisk type. You're not going to put Barry Bonds next to Jeter, or you're not going to put him next to Cal, or Brooks Robinson, any of those guys. Make a little separate room for him and say, here are the guys who we suspected or who have had a positive test. But guess what? Guy hit 690 home runs. Like, guy could hit the hell out of the ball. He could field, he could throw, he could do this and that. I think they have to. And again, it's just baseball writers being insanely like egotistical people. Like, well, I was offended in the 90s watching it. It's like, no, you weren't, dude. You were jumping up and down in that summer watching Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa hit home runs like the rest of America. Like, you weren't sitting there as a 20-year-old being like, this is bad for the game. This sucks. It's like, dude, you shut up, vote, and get it over with. I hate that, again, like we talked about, the baseball voters, they make it all about themselves. How can I turn this into a story about me? How can I get my name out there? So I almost wish that they kept their names private, because, again, half of these guys are looking for some sort of return. Like you and I were just talking about off camera, this guy, Dan Scretta or whatever, who waits 10 years to get a vote. And then when he gets his ballot, he doesn't vote for anyone because they didn't meet his character and integrity things off the field. It's like, dude, no one cares about you, Dan Scretta. So long story short, very long story, put him in. Put those guys in the Hall of Fame. If they meet the requirements, of course, the voting requirements.
The shift in voting in the last 5 to 10 years has kind of been, at first when Bonds and Clemens first came on the ballot, that's like, oh, this is an outrage. And now we're starting to slowly get into there's almost three camps. It's like the Bonds and Clemens, because you can't vote for one and not vote for the other. There's like those two guys are okay. And then you have like the guys that are like, there's whispers about their steroids, like Mike Piazza and Bagwell and Pudge. Mm-hmm. There's those guys that are kind of iffy, but most people are generally going to let them in. And then there's like the people that went in front of Congress and tested positive, like Rafi and Sammy. Well, Sammy didn't technically test positive. It was an anonymous report. And also he claimed to not speak English. Shout out Sammy.
Yeah. Now he's white. So
now he's white. So a lot has happened. But there's like these three camps. And so now we're kind of like, there's a lot of gray area in here. And I think it's all very subjective. But like, the 500 home run guys that have no shot at getting in, like Rafi's probably off the ballot and McGuire and Sosa have no chance of getting in. Do you think that's fair? Or do you think that they should be like given a second chance with like that committee that put Harold Baines in for some reason?
That's a good question. I mean, because again, the Rafi thing, obviously it's so, I mean, I remember that vividly because I mean, I love the guy. I loved watching that lefty stroke onto Utah Street. And he had the finger to the, camera, I want to make this clear. I did not do steroids, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets popped, I think they said after his 3,000th hit, like he knew that he had tested positive. He was already in the process of appealing it or whatever. Yeah. And who knows if they'll get voted in on one of like the Veterans Committee, again, like Harold Baines or someone like that. Because and it just comes down to the baseball writers being like, well, that hurt me so bad that's why obviously they never got votes. It is interesting because again, the three camps. I mean, you nailed it. There's the like, well, you got Bonds and Clemens are linked at the hip. Manny Ramirez tested positive for all types of testosterone stuff. And then you have the guys like, well, Pudge maybe, I don't know, his head never got bigger. Mike Piazza maybe, and I've never thought of it how it is broken down into like those three sections. But like, should some of those guys be added back on? I don't think so, because again, I think it's just, I think you just got to leave them off at this time if they've fallen off. And again, they gotta, like, I think Palmeiro knows that what he did was wrong. And again, because again, like a guy like Andy Pettitte, he just flat out came out and was like, yeah, I did it. I messed up. Sorry. And he's never brought up in the same thing. And again, maybe it's because he was always that likable guy. But the way that Rafi came out, the finger pointing, like, no, it wasn't me. Maybe that's why. But I mean, I don't even think Pettitte is still on the ballot. But no, I think they just kind of have to wait their turn now. And I think they're probably, I feel like most of these guys have kind of come to the conclusion that, hey, I'm probably not going to get in. If it is, I'll probably be dead for 5 years before they, make that announcement that those guys get in.
It's because like the Bonds and Clemens, they transcend the game. It's the greatest pitcher and hitter. So you have to put those guys in. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we've already let enough guys into the Hall of Fame that have enough going on. Like Tim Raines was on cocaine every single game and he kept it in his back pocket and he's in the Hall of Fame. So like it's not technically a steroid, but not great.
I'm sure. So I'm sure it helped him out somehow.
Right, exactly. So I don't know. We kind of have to start moving towards a little bit of a more liberal stance on this, where it's just like, there's already guys in there that have probably done it. Mike Piazza probably did it. Bagwell probably did it. Pudge, you mentioned the thing. So I don't know. It's very complicated, but I love having these debates every single January.
Yeah, I mean, they're very fun. And again, it's going to be obviously the class that we've seen of those guys. I mean, there are going to be some other guys coming up soon that like, just again, like David Ortiz is the one that is always going to jump out to me. Cause again, he's one of those guys, he tested positive and it was in that unreleased report or whatever, but it's like, it was a positive test for steroids and it was mentioned in the Mitchell report and all that stuff. So there's going to be some Boston writer who has for years been like, I will not vote for Barry Bonds to get in. And I guarantee you the first time that David Ortiz is on that ballot, he'll check his name and he'll say, great hitter, great Hall of Famer, one of the best hitters I've ever seen. Go in. So again, that it's going to be weird with that.
What about the whole like
how do you pick and choose your steroid users?
It is like pick your steroid user. What about the better player, nicer guy? What if that comes into play? Because people are going to say, well, he did the steroids, but it's Poppy being Poppy. And then there's unlikable guys like McGuire and Sosa and all these other guys that just have this like innate unlikability where it's just like, I don't know, 580 home runs. These sucks.
That's why it comes down to like these damn writers being like, well, Barry Bonds didn't give me an interview once when I was 18 and during spring training, so I'm not voting for him. And like you have people who do stuff like that. And again, it's weird because like should their like how they are off the field, should that factor into whether they're Hall of Famers or not? Probably not, because Ty Cobb's in the Hall of Fame and that guy was a huge racist. Like he was very open about it. I mean, and that's when it comes down to well, what he does on the field is that's the only thing that matters. And I don't know, because then it's weird, because even like last night I'm watching the NFL and they're talking about, Derrick Henry is the 8th person in NFL history to run for 2,000 yards, OJ Simpson being one of them. And I saw like a Facebook comment like, I don't recognize OJ as running for 2,000 yards. And it's like, well, he did 20 years before he murdered his wife. But guess what? He ran for 2,000 yards and like he's in the Hall of Fame. We're going to have to talk about that. It's I don't know. It's so weird. Like, because again, you're going to get the like Manny Ramirez. Yeah, but he was funny. Remember when he peed in the Green Monster? Yeah. So what, he got popped. He was entertaining. And then it's like, I know, well, Roger Clemens was an asshole and he didn't want to pitch on the road when he was a Houston Astro. He only wanted to pitch at home and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I kind of just believe like when he's in uniform, he can do what he wants. And like, if he hits 590 home runs, put him in the Hall of Fame. If he doesn't live at home, or if he stiffed a Girl Scout on the way home from the grocery store, something like that, like that probably shouldn't come back and to bite him in the butt if he's up for Hall of Fame or something.
And that kind of ties into Curt Schilling, which we'll talk about in a second. But